There was a knock at my door at 7 in the morning, and I knew who it was before I opened it. I wasn't expecting her, but nobody else knocks like that. 2 knuckles, twice, then a pause, like she's already deciding whether to run. I opened the door. Rachel stood on my porch with a pack on her back that was too big for her. 60 liters, maybe more. The kind of pack you take up a mountain, and she'd hauled it clear across town to my door. It sat high on her shoulders and pulled her backward a little, and she'd cinched the hip belt so tight it made her look smaller than she was. She had her hair pulled back. She was wearing Danny's old blue softshell, the one with the tape over the tear on the left elbow. I knew that jacket. I'd watched him buy it. I'd made fun of the color. "Hey, Ben," she said. "Hey." And then neither of us said anything, because what do you say? Let me back up. My name is Ben Carver. I'm 36. I run a gear shop at the edge of town, the kind with climbing rope by the foot and a wall of carabiners and a coffee maker that's older than half my customers. I guide too, in the season. Alpine routes mostly. I've put a lot of people on top of a lot of mountains and gotten every one of them back down. Everyone except the one that mattered. Danny Ross was my best friend since we were 19. We learned to climb together on a chossy little crag behind the community college. Both of us broke, both of us stupid, both of us convinced we were going to be the ones who did it right. He got better than me. Everybody knew it. He had the thing you can't teach, the calm that shows up exactly when the rock gets bad. 14 months ago, he went up on the north face of Coldwater alone. I wasn't there. That's the part I've stopped explaining to people, because there's no version of it that sounds like anything but what it is. He asked me to come. He asked me twice. The first time was over beers in the shop after close, and I laughed and said the north face in shoulder season was a bad idea, and he should wait for a partner. The second time was a text the Sunday before. 2 clear days coming if the window holds. You in? I had a shop to run and a knee that was acting up and 100 small reasons that all added up to one thing, which is that I stayed home. I typed back "can't this week, next month," and he sent a thumbs up. That was the last thing that ever passed between us. A thumbs up. He went up on a Tuesday. The weather turned Wednesday. They found him Friday, about 400 feet below the summit, on a route I'd have talked him out of. I go over it. You always think there's a version where you catch it, where your phone buzzes and you see the forecast and you call him and say "don't," and he listens. I've built that phone call in my head 1,000 times. In every one of them, I'm there, roped to him, watching the sky, catching the thing he missed. In the real one, I'm asleep in my own bed with my phone face down on the nightstand, and I don't even hear it when the search coordinator finally calls. So when I say I knew who was knocking, I mean I've been half waiting for Rachel to show up on my porch for 14 months. To ask me the question I keep asking myself. Where were you? She didn't ask that. She stood there holding the straps of that pack with both hands, and she said, "Can I come in? This is heavy." I stepped back and let her in. My place is small. One room that does most of the work, a kitchen along one wall, a wood stove I don't clean often enough. She set the pack down by the door, slow, like it was full of something she didn't want to jostle. Then she straightened up and looked at me, and I saw how tired she was. It was the kind of tired that lives behind the eyes, the kind sleep never reaches. "You want coffee?" I said. It wasn't really a question. Yeah. I made coffee. My hands were steadier than the rest of me. That's the thing about doing something 1,000 times. The hands just go. I ground the beans and heated the water, and I could feel her watching my back the whole time, and I let her, because it gave us both something to do that wasn't talking. Rachel is my age. 35. She and Danny got married when they were 28, in a state park, on a day so windy the officiant had to hold the papers down with a rock. I was the best man. I gave a speech that made everybody cry, and then I dropped the ring in the grass and we all crawled around looking for it for 10 minutes. Danny laughed so hard he couldn't breathe. That's the memory that comes up. Not the funeral. The ring in the grass and him on his hands and knees, wheezing, useless, happy. I brought her the coffee. She wrapped both hands around the mug and didn't drink it. "How's the shop?" she said. "It's a shop. You still open Sundays?" "Not anymore." She nodded like that meant something. Maybe it did. We ran out of small talk fast. We always did. Danny was the bridge between us, the one who kept every conversation moving, and without him Rachel and I were two people who loved the same person and never quite learned how to talk to each other directly. When he was alive, we'd go whole dinners with him doing 90% of the talking and the two of us just laughing at him. Now there was nobody in the middle, and the room felt bigger than it was. She set the coffee down on the table. And then she reached into the top of the pack, into the lid pocket, and she took out two things. The first was a small wooden box about the size of a loaf of bread, dark and plain, with a little brass clasp. I knew what it was without asking. You always know. She set it down with both hands, careful, the way you'd set down something sleeping. The second was an envelope. White, ordinary, the flap sealed. Something folded inside it, thicker than a letter. My name was on the front in Danny's handwriting. Just my name. Ben. She held the envelope for a second longer, turning it over once in her hands and set it down next to the box. He wrote that before he went up, she said. It was in his desk. In an envelope inside another envelope with a sticky note that said, "Give this to Ben." Her voice stayed level. She'd practiced this part. I found it about 2 months ago. I wasn't ready before then. I don't know if I'm ready now. I looked at the envelope. I didn't touch it. What's in it? I said. I don't know. You didn't open it. It's got your name on it, she said it soft. It's not mine to open. I picked it up. It was heavier than a letter should be. There was something stiff folded inside, cardstock or thick paper, and through the envelope I could feel the edge of it, a hard rectangle with a fold down the middle. My thumb found the sealed flap and stopped there. I don't know how long I sat with my thumb on the flap. Long enough that Rachel looked away, out the window, to give me the room. I set it back down without opening it. I couldn't do it, not with her watching in the box right there. There are things you can't open in front of another person, and this was one of them. She let me not open it, and that's a kind of mercy people don't get enough credit for. Rachel, I said. Why are you here? She'd been waiting for that. She turned the mug a quarter turn on the table. Her hand wasn't quite steady, and she saw me see it, and she pressed it flat against the ceramic to stop it. I want to finish his climb, she said. The wood stove ticked. Outside a truck went by, and I listened to it the whole way down the road. I said the name back to her. Coldwater. Coldwater. The north face. The route he was on, she met my eyes and held them. I want to take him up there. What's in that box? I want to put him on top of the thing he was 400 feet short of, and sit up there for 1 minute, and then come down. And I can't do it alone, because I've been climbing for exactly 14 months, and I'm not good, and I know it, and I'm not stupid enough to pretend otherwise. I stared at her. You've been climbing. Every weekend. Gym first. Then the crag out by the reservoir. Then bigger stuff up north with a hired guide, real snow, real rope work. She said it fast, like she'd been waiting to be doubted. I'm not asking you to think I can do this. I'm asking you to make it so I can. Rachel. That route killed him. I know exactly what that route did. Her voice cracked on it just once and she pulled it back. I was the one who identified him. So don't sit there and tell me what that route did. That shut me up. We sat there. I looked at the box and the envelope and the too big pack by my door, and the whole thing came at me at once. The size of what she was asking, the impossibility of it, and under all of it, the one question I couldn't get past. Why me? I said. Because I don't want a stranger up there. She said it plainly. I don't want a guide I paid who never met him, carrying my husband up a mountain like it's a job. I want somebody who knew him. Somebody who'd be careful with him. Somebody who understands what it is. She stopped. Then she said the thing she'd come to say. And because he wrote you a note before he went, Ben. He wrote it to you and nobody else. I don't know what it says, but I know he wanted you to have it, and I think whatever this is, you're supposed to be part of it. She looked at the envelope with my name on it, and then back at me. She said the next part quiet, and it wasn't cruel, but she said it. He asked you to come that day. You didn't. I'm not throwing that at you. I know it's been eating you alive, because it's been eating me too, and I'm not even the one who said no. There it was. She set the truth on the table next to the box, gentle as she could make it, and let it sit there. You could hate me, I said. It'd make more sense than this. I tried. Something almost like a smile touched her mouth and left again. It didn't take. You loved him too. Turns out that matters more than the rest of it. I got up. I couldn't sit anymore. I went to the window and looked out at nothing, at the gray morning, and the ridgeline you can just see from my place if the clouds are high enough. Coldwater is behind those. You can't see it from town. You have to want to. I told myself I was never going near that mountain again. I'd meant it the way you mean things when the wound is fresh, which is to say completely and forever, until forever turns out to be shorter than you thought. Every reason not to do this lined up in a row. The route. Her experience. Her not really knowing what she was asking. My knee. The fact that I hadn't roped up seriously since the funeral, hadn't touched real rock, had let 14 months of rust settle into the one thing I used to be good at. The fact that if anything happened to Rachel up there, on top of what happened to Danny, I would not survive it, not in any way that counted. And behind all of it, one small thing, pulling the other direction. He'd written me a note. He'd sealed it up and left it in a desk, and it had waited 14 months to find its way to my table. Whatever was in it, he wrote it thinking about that mountain. About that route. About the summit line he never got to cross. I turned around. Rachel was watching me, with the steady, exhausted patience of someone who had already decided she was going up that mountain with or without me, and was only here to find out which. "How much have you actually carried?" I said. "Full pack. Real vertical. Not a treadmill in a gym." How? Up Harker Ridge in one push. My guide timed me. She lifted her chin a little. I was slow. I didn't quit. Rope skills. I can build an anchor. I can belay. I can rappel without thinking about it too hard. A pause. I can't lead. I know I can't lead. That's what you'd be for. I looked at her a long moment. She didn't look away. "I need to see the forecast," I heard myself say. The window. Coldwater's got maybe 3-4 clean days a season on the north side. Everything else it's ice or storm or both, and you do not want to be on that face in either. She went very still. "That's not a no," she said. "No." I picked up my phone off the counter, and my chest did something complicated, tight and open at the same time. It's not a no. I'd sworn I'd never say yes to that mountain again. I stood in my own kitchen and heard the word come out of me anyway. "I'll take you up," I said. "If the weather gives us a real window, and your gear checks out, and you do exactly what I say up there when I say it, no arguing. Those are the terms." "Those are the terms," she said. She closed her eyes for a second. Just one. When she opened them, they were wet, but she didn't let it go further than that, and I didn't make her. She reached out and set her hand flat on the top of the wooden box, the way you'd rest a hand on someone's shoulder, and she left it there. I looked down at my phone and pulled up the mountain weather, the 7-day for the Coldwater Basin, and started reading the columns. Wind speed. Freezing level. Precip percentage, hour by hour, the numbers marching down the screen in a language I hadn't let myself read in over a year. My thumb moved on its own, the old habit coming back like it had never left. There was a break coming. 9 days out. 2 days of low wind and a high freezing level, a thin blue seam in a wall of storm. And the note sat there on the table between us. Sealed, my name in Danny's hand waiting. The window held for 4 more days, and on the 5th I loaded the truck. You'd think packing for a mountain would get faster the more times you do it. It doesn't. It gets slower because you know exactly what a small mistake costs. I laid everything out on the shop floor the night before, the way I always did with Danny, 2 piles side by side, and stood over them with a mug going cold in my hand. Rope and rack, pickets and screws, the stove and the fuel and the little pot with the dent in it. 2 sleeping bags rated colder than the forecast because the forecast lies. I checked it all twice, and then I checked Rachel's twice, and I made her stand there while I did it, which she didn't love. "I already went through it," she said. "I know. Twice. I believe you." I pulled her crampons out and turned them over and ran a thumb along the points. "I'm still going to look." She let me look. That was the deal. She'd said the words in my kitchen, "Do exactly what I say, no arguing," and to her credit she meant them. Mostly. Danny used to say gear checks were the closest thing climbers have to prayer. You lay it all out, you touch every piece, you make your peace with the fact that some of it is going to be all that's between you and a very long way down. He said it like a joke. He meant it completely. I found myself doing his little ritual without deciding to. The same order, the same slow hands, and Rachel watched me do it, and I think she recognized it too, because she got quiet in a way that wasn't about the gear. We left before dawn. The drive to the trailhead is 3 hours if the road cooperates and 4 if it doesn't. First hour is highway, flat and dark, the heater ticking, both of us pretending to be more awake than we were. Rachel had the seat back and her knees up on the dash, and Danny's blue softshell balled under her head like a pillow. I kept my eyes on the road and one part of my brain on the fact that I was doing this. Driving toward Coldwater with his wife and his ashes and a note I still hadn't opened. I'd put the note in the truck. I want to be honest about that. I hadn't opened it, but I hadn't left it home either. It was in the glove box, and I knew it was there the whole way up, the way you know a stone is in your shoe. We stopped for gas about an hour in. One of those stations that's the last real anything before the road goes to gravel and pine. Rachel went in while I pumped and came back out with 2 coffees in a cardboard tray and a bag of the little powdered donuts, the kind that taste like sweetened chalk and are somehow perfect at 5 in the morning. She handed me a coffee. Our fingers touched on the cup, and neither of us made anything of it. They only had hazelnut creamer, she said, like an apology. Danny drank his black. Danny was a psychopath. She climbed back in and pulled the door shut against the cold. I put 4 creamers in mine. Judge away. I got in. I sipped the coffee. It was terrible, and it was exactly what I wanted. We sat there in the gas station light for a minute before I pulled back onto the road, and it was the first time since she'd knocked on my door that the quiet between us felt easy instead of loaded. 2 people with bad coffee and a long drive. For 1 minute it was just that. He'd have hated this creamer, she said, mostly to herself. He'd have made that face. The one where he looked like the coffee personally insulted him. That one. She smiled at the window. God, I miss that stupid face. I didn't say anything. Some things you just let sit in the cab and take up room. The gravel started about 20 minutes later, and the talking got easier the higher we went. The way it does when the world narrows to trees and switchbacks, and there's nothing to do but be in it together. She asked me about the shop. I told her about the guy who came in every Thursday to look at the same ice axe he was never going to buy. She laughed, a real one, and told me she'd started teaching again, 3rd grade, back in the fall, and that on hard days the kids didn't know anything was wrong with her, and that was the whole point. That was why she did it. 7-year-olds don't hand you your grief back across a counter. They just need their shoes tied. Do you ever? She started and stopped. Tried again. Do you go up anymore? Since. No. At all. I take clients on the easy stuff in summer. Ridge walks. Nothing that counts. I downshifted for a rough patch. This is the first real thing I've packed for since the funeral. She was quiet a second. Then we're both 14 months out of practice. You never had practice. Rude, but fair. We got to the trailhead a little after 9. It's a dirt lot, a battered kiosk with a faded map, a pit toilet, and then the mountain which you can't actually see from the lot because a shoulder of forest is in the way. You have to walk in to earn the view. That's always been true of the good ones. We shouldered the packs. Mine came up onto my shoulders like an old argument, heavy and familiar. Rachel's fought her a little. I watched her get the hip belt set, watched her rock forward under the weight and find the balance point, and she did it right. She'd learned that much. But I could see the 60 pounds was going to be a long conversation between her and the trail. Slow is fine, I said. Slow gets there. Fast gets hurt. Danny used to say that. Danny stole it from me. The first day of the approach is a grind and nothing more. Forest, then thinning forest, then the country where the trees give up, and it's talus and heather, and the wind starts having opinions. We didn't talk much on the uphill because you can't, not honestly, not with a full pack and thin air. We fell into a rhythm. I set a pace I could hold all day, and she stayed on my heels, and when she needed to stop she said minute and I stopped, and we didn't make a thing of it. There's an intimacy to walking behind someone all day that people don't talk about. You learn their breathing. You learn when they're struggling before they say so. By afternoon I could hear the difference between her tired and her fine without turning around. About 4 hours up there's a slabby section, wet from snowmelt, a place where the trail crosses a runnel of water over smooth rock. Nothing technical. Just slick and exposed enough that a slip would hurt. I went across and turned to spot her, and she came out onto the slab, and her boot skated, just a few inches, that lurch where the ground stops being trustworthy. Her arm shot out, and I already had my hand there, and her hand found it. I held on until both her feet were under her again, and then she stepped off the slab onto dry rock and I let go. "Thanks," she said. "That's the job." But her hand had been cold and mine wasn't, and for a second after I let go I was aware of the shape of it, the way you're aware of a thing after it's gone. I put it out of my head and kept walking. There's no room for that up here. That's what I told myself. We made high camp a little before 6. There's a flat bench at about 11,000 feet, tucked behind a rib of rock that breaks the wind, with a tarn that's half snowmelt and a view straight up the north face of Coldwater that stops you in your tracks the first time you see it. Rachel stopped in her tracks. I let her. It's a lot of mountain. Dark rock and blue ice, and way up at the top, a clean line of snow against the sky where the summit ridge runs. Somewhere on that face, 400 feet down from the top, is where they found him. I didn't point it out. She knew. She looked at it for a long time, and I set up the tent, which is where the sleeping arrangement became a conversation. I'd brought the tent I always bring, a 2-person that's really a 1.5-person. 'Cause ounces matter, and I hadn't thought it through, or maybe I hadn't let myself think it through. I got it up and stick, and then stood there looking at it like it had done something. "It's small," I said. "I can see that. I've got a bivy sack. I can sleep out. It's supposed to stay clear tonight. I'll be fine." "Ben," she crossed her arms. "It's 11,000 feet and it's going to be 20 degrees. You're not sleeping in a bag on the dirt to protect my honor." "I wasn't protecting your honor. You were absolutely protecting my honor, and it's very old-fashioned, and I'm too tired for it." She unclipped her helmet and shook her hair out. "There's 2 bags. We're 2 adults. We've known each other for 17 years. Get in the tent. .. So we got in the tent. We set up the little stove in the vestibule, Danny's old stove, the brass one that primes with white gas and roars like a jet engine when it gets going. I'd carried it for years. It was the stove we learned on. I pumped it and lit it, and it caught with that familiar whump. And Rachel watched the flame and I watched her watch it, and neither of us said the obvious thing, which is that we'd both eaten 100 meals cooked on that exact stove with Danny sitting between us. I melted snow. I made the freeze-dried stuff, the beef one, which is the least bad one. We ate out of the bags with the same spoon, passing it back and forth because I'd forgotten to pack a second one, and that made her laugh, the forgotten spoon, the great mountain guide who forgot a spoon. "You had one job," she said. I had approximately 400 jobs. The spoon was low priority. Danny would never have forgotten the spoon. Danny forgot the tent poles once. On an overnight. We slept under the fly with rocks holding it up. I took the spoon back. So let's not pretend he was Mr. Preparedness. He did not. Boundary Lake. Ask him. And then we both went quiet, because you can't ask him, and I'd said it without thinking, the way you keep setting a place at the table for months after. She recovered first. She always did. "Tell me the tent pole story." So I told her. And that opened the door, and we sat in the little tent in the dark with the stove hissing, and told Danny stories for an hour, the dumb ones, the good ones. The time he tried to impress a girl by soloing a boulder and got stuck at the top and had to be talked down by a 9-year-old. The wedding ring in the grass. The way he'd narrate his own climbing in a nature documentary voice when the moves got hard. Here we see the North American Gumby in his natural habitat. And it was the first time either of us had laughed like that in over a year. Real laughing, the kind that leaves you tired. And then the laughing wound down the way it does, and left that soft, flattened quiet behind it. And in that quiet, Rachel reached into the lid of her pack and took out the envelope. This one was Rachel's, with her name on it. The one thing she'd brought that was Danny's own hand. It was a page from his climbing log. She'd told me on the drive that she'd taken one page out of the book and carried it separate, laminated it even, at the copy shop, so it wouldn't fall apart from handling. His log went back years. Every route, every date, a line for each, and a little box he'd cross off when he topped out. He was fanatical about it. He'd cross that box off with a hard black slash like he was settling a debt. She unfolded the page in the light of my headlamp and read it out loud. Not all of it. Just the last lines. His plans, the ones he'd written in the weeks before, in that cramped forward-leaning handwriting I'd know hell anywhere. Coldwater, North Face, direct. And then a date, the Tuesday. And then the box. Empty. Every line above it crossed off, years of them, a whole life of finished things. And that one line at the bottom, with the little box still open, waiting for a slash that never came. She ran her thumb over the empty box. Once. The lamination made it shine. He crossed off everything, she said quietly. His whole life. Every single one. And then this dot. She folded the page back up along its worn creases and held it against her chest with both hands, and I understood, finally, in my body and not just my head, what we were carrying up this mountain and why she couldn't have carried it alone. I should tell you about the other person in this story because she comes into it here, on the phone, that night at high camp. There's cell signal at the bench if you stand on the right rock. 1 bar if the weather's clear. Rachel climbed out to call Danny's sister. Her name's Maya. She's 26, 10 years younger than Danny was, and she was the kid sister who trailed after us for years. The one we taught to belay when she was 14 so she'd stop begging. Danny raised her more than their parents did, honestly, after their dad left. When he died, something in Maya went hard and still. She quit her job. She stopped climbing entirely, wouldn't touch a rope, wouldn't drive past the gear shop. She told Rachel that going up any mountain again, ever, was a way of pretending it was okay that he was gone, and she wasn't going to pretend. I could hear Rachel's half of the call through the tent wall. Low, patient, the same voice over and over. We're okay, we're safe, Ben's careful. I know. I know you don't understand it. When she came back and her face was tight. She thinks I'm doing it to punish myself, Rachel said. She got into her bag. She thinks going up there is me refusing to move on. What do you think? She was quiet for a while. Long enough I thought she was done. I think Maya's got it backwards, she finally said. She thinks the way to honor him is to freeze. Stop climbing, stop everything, keep the whole world exactly where it was the day he died, like a house with the clocks stopped. She turned onto her back and looked up at the dark nylon. She thinks freezing honors him. All it did was hollow her out. He'd hate it. He'd hate what it did to her. And this is different. This is finishing something, she said simply. A counselor told me once that the work is to carry it with you and keep walking, one step at a time. I didn't figure that out on my own. But it stuck, because it's true. I lay there and thought about my glove box 3 hours down the mountain, and the note in it, and how not opening it was my own way of keeping a clock stopped. The stove ticked as it cooled in the cold air. She said it into the dark, not looking at me, in the flat, careful voice people use when they've rehearsed something so it won't come apart in their mouth. I need to tell you why I really asked you. I didn't move. I told you it's because you knew him. Because I didn't want a stranger up there. That part's true too, she swallowed. I heard it. The real reason is smaller and worse. You're the only other person on earth who feels what I feel. Everybody else says they're so sorry and they mean it, and then they go home to their lives. You didn't go home to a life. You've been up here on this mountain in your head for 14 months, same as me, punishing yourself for a phone you didn't answer, and I'm the only one who knows that about you, and you're the only one who knows it about me. Her voice thinned. I needed somebody who's as broken about this as I am. Somebody who wouldn't be steady up there while I came apart. That's you. That's the whole reason. I'm sorry it's not a nicer one. The stove had gone out. It was very quiet. I could hear the tarn moving somewhere out in the dark, and her breathing, careful, waiting. It's a good reason, I said. It was all I had. It's the truest thing anybody's said to me since it happened. She didn't answer. But her hand came across the little gap between the bags and found mine in the dark, and she held on the way I'd held onto hers on the wet slab. And this time neither of us let go for a long while, and we didn't say anything about it, and there was nothing to say. I woke before her the way I always do. Gray light coming through the nylon. I lay there for a second, feeling almost human, feeling like something in the cracked thing I'd been for 14 months had shifted a 1/4 inch toward whole. Then I checked the phone. I'd left it on to catch the overnight forecast update, and it had come in around 4. I read the columns the way I'd read them at my kitchen table, freezing level, wind precip, hour by hour. And the numbers had moved. The clean seam we'd driven up here for was closing. A storm that had been sitting out over the coast, minding its own business, had turned inland overnight and picked up speed. Where the forecast had promised us 2 calm days, There was now one. Maybe not even a full one. I looked over at Rachel, still asleep. Her hand still near mine. Her face for once not holding anything, and I knew that in about a minute I was going to have to wake her up and tell her that the easy part was over. That the mountain had stopped being a place we were carrying Danny and started being a place that could take us too. And whatever had just opened up between us in the dark was going to have to wait behind the weather, because up here, the weather doesn't wait for anyone. I let her sleep another 10 minutes. It was the last kind thing the day was going to allow, so I took my time about it. I lay there watching the gray light come up on the tent wall and doing the math I didn't want to do, adding the freezing level to the wind to the hour the front was due, and getting an answer I liked less every time I ran it. Then I put my hand on her shoulder. Rachel. Hey. We need to talk about the weather. She came awake all at once the way people do up high, no soft landing. She looked at me, then at the phone still in my hand, and she read my face before I said anything. How bad? Not a whole day anymore. The storm off the coast turned inland. We've got maybe till early afternoon before the wind comes up, and after that the top of this thing is going to be a bad place to be standing. She sat up in the bag. Her hair was flat on one side. She looked about 19 and about 100 both. So what does that mean? It means the easy version is gone. I handed her the phone so she could see the columns herself. She'd earned that. We climb light and fast today, all the way to the top and back down to this camp before the front hits, or we don't go at all. There's no comfortable middle. No sit and see. She read the numbers for a long time. I gave her the room to. Then she handed the phone back and started pulling her boots into the vestibule, and I understood we were going. We ate standing up. Oatmeal from the dented pot, too hot, both of us burning our mouths and not caring. I ran the stove hard to melt water and filled every bottle we had, because there's no snow to melt on the upper ridge, and thirst up there turns your brain to wet paper faster than anything. I packed the small pack. Rope, a light rack, 2 pickets, the screws, a stove, and a scrap of food in case the day went sideways, a spare layer each. Everything else stayed in the tent. We'd be back for it, one way or another. Coldwater's north face has a fixed line on the crux pitch, a length of old cable somebody bolted in years ago, where the rock goes vertical and slick above a 200-foot drop. Guides use it. I've used it a dozen times. It's the kind of thing that's perfectly safe, right up until the morning it isn't. Danny had used it too that last day. I knew that from the report. 400 feet below the summit, they'd said, and the fixed line is a little below that. So somewhere on this route today I was going to reach up and clip the same steel my best friend clipped on the last morning of his life. And there was no way around that fact, and no point pretending there was. We roped up at the base of the couloir in the blue almost dark. I gave her the safety talk one more time, short version. Watch where I put my feet. If I stop, you stop. If I say down, we go down and we don't debate it on the mountain. She nodded at all of it. Then she did a thing I didn't expect. She reached inside Danny's blue softshell, the one she was still wearing, and took out the note. The note. She'd carried it the whole way in her chest pocket, right over her heart, where I'd stopped thinking about it because I couldn't afford to. Now she held it out flat on her glove in the gray light and looked at it. The envelope was soft at the corners from 14 months of being held. His handwriting on the front, my name and hers, the D of Danny's hand where he'd signed nothing yet because it wasn't signed, it was left. I keep thinking I should read it before we go up, she said. In case. Neither of us finished the in case. She got a thumbnail under the flap. I watched her do it. She lifted the corner, and the old glue gave with a small dry sound, and the envelope came open a 1/4 inch, and inside I could see the top edge of the folded log page, the one with the summit line he never crossed off. And then she stopped. She held it there, half open, for the length of about 3 breaths. Her thumb hovered. Then she pressed the flap back down, careful, like she was tucking something in for the night. Up there, she said. We read it up there or we don't read it at all. That was the deal I made with myself in the truck. She slid it back into the soft shell, over her heart. It waits. You sure? I'm not sure about anything I've done since I knocked on your door. She almost smiled. But I'm sure about that. She handed me the pack strap to check her one more time, and I checked her, and we started up. The couloir went fine. Steep snow, good crampon purchase, the rhythm of it settling both of us. there's a mercy in hard physical work when your head is loud. For an hour there was only the crunch of steel on snow and the pull of my own breath, and Rachel's silhouette below me on the rope, moving well, moving like Danny had taught her without either of us saying his name. We reached the base of the crux pitch as the first real light hit the summit ridge above us, gold on the rime, beautiful in the way that also means the clock is running. The fixed line hung down the rock, iced at the top, the cable dark and wet where the sun hadn't reached it yet. I clipped in. I put my hand on the steel and felt the cold of it come through my glove, and for 1 second I was not on the mountain at all. I was in my kitchen with my phone face down. I was typing "can't this week." I was hearing a thumbs up land in a life that was about to end. "Ben." Rachel's voice, right below me. "You went somewhere," she said. "I'm here." "You went somewhere." I looked down at her. And I don't know if it was the steel in my hand, or her face turned up to mine in that gold light, or just that we were finally close enough to the thing that I couldn't keep walking around it. But I told her. "He asked me to come." On this climb, my voice came out steadier than I felt. "I've let everybody think I didn't know which climb it was. That I couldn't have stopped it. That's not the shape of it. He texted me the Sunday before. 2 clear days if the window holds you in." And I said, "Can't this week." I had the shop and a bad knee for cover, and the honest reason underneath all of it was that I didn't feel like it. I wanted a normal week. I picked a normal week over him, and he went up alone, and this is the exact steel he clipped 4 days before they found him below it. The wind was starting to move on the ridge above us. I could hear it finding the rocks, a low sound with an edge coming into it. So when you said in the tent that I've been punishing myself for a phone I didn't answer, I said, "You were close." It's worse than that. That text was a hand he held out, and I looked at it, and I said maybe next month. For a while she didn't say anything. The cable ticked against the rock in the wind. "Okay," she said finally. "Now I know. That's it. That's the whole thing. Ben," she waited until I looked at her. "I've spent 14 months building you into the man who let Danny die. It gave me somewhere to put it. And now you're standing right there, and you're just a guy who wanted a quiet week. The same as he'd have wanted, the same as anybody. You didn't kill him. You disappointed him. Those are different sizes." Her jaw worked under the hood. "He'd have forgiven you by Christmas. You know that. He forgave everybody everything. It drove me crazy for 11 years. He never got a Christmas." "No," she said. "He didn't. So you have to do the forgiving now, because he can't, and I'm too tired to carry both of us up this rock while you hate yourself. Clip in and climb. I clipped in and climbed. The crux is 30 feet of almost nothing to stand on, all balance and trust in the steel. I went first, slow, testing ice-glazed hold, talking her through the moves below me. She was doing well. She was 2 moves from the top of the pitch when her right foot skated. It happened the way it always happens, fast and quiet, no drama to it. Her crampon caught a skin of verglas on a hold that had looked dry, and it shot out from under her, and she came off the rock. The fixed line caught her. That's what it's there for. She dropped maybe 2 feet and swung into the wall, and the cable held, and my heart tried to leave my body through my throat. "I've got you," I said, which was a lie. The steel had her, but you say it anyway. "I've got you. Get your feet back on the rock. There's a nub by your left knee. Feel for it with your boot. Good, that's it. Weight it slow. You're doing fine. Just keep breathing." She found the nub and got her boot on it and stopped swinging. Her breath came in short, hard pulls I could hear over the wind. She climbed the last 2 moves on shaking legs and pulled herself onto the little ledge beside me, and she stood there with both gloves fisted on the anchor, staring at the rock, the way you do when your body knows something your head hasn't caught up to yet. "I almost went," she said. I felt it. I felt the whole thing let go. The line held. It's built to hold 3 of you. You're okay, God. That's not what I mean. She turned and looked at me, and her face was open in a way I'd never seen it, all the careful gone out of it. For a second when my foot went, I thought, this is how it happens up here. And I thought about the tent and your hand, and I thought, I don't want it to be how. I want to go home. I almost turned around at the base this morning, and now I'm 400 feet up, hanging off the same cable that was the last thing my husband ever touched, and I want to be alive, Ben. I forgot that I wanted that. I forgot for 14 months. I didn't reach for her. I wanted to. The wind was coming up and we were on a ledge the size of a doormat, and there was steel and rope and cold between us. So I just held the look. She held it back. Neither of us named it, because there's a kind of look that dies the second you put a word on it, and we both knew better than to kill this one. Then we go up, I said, and we come down and you go home. All three of those. In that order. In that order, she said. We reached the summit ridge a little after 11. The wind was a real thing now, shoving at us, snapping the hood of my shell against my cheek. Off to the west I could see it coming, the gray wall of the front sliding in over the lower peaks, eating them one at a time. We had maybe an hour of standing up weather left, and the true summit was still an hour and change along the ridge. I did the math a third time. I hate the math. There's a false summit on Coldwater, a rock hump a good bit before the real one, close enough that on a soft day people stop there and call it good and never know the difference. We were near it. I could have pointed at it and said, "That's the top," and Rachel would have believed me, and we'd have been down and safe an hour sooner, and Danny's line would have stayed uncrossed, and nobody living would ever have known the difference. I thought about it. I want to be honest that I thought about it. Then I thought about a man who held his hand out to me and got maybe next month. "Real one's still ahead," I said. "That bump's a fake. If we're going, we go now and we go fast, and we turn around at 12:30 no matter where we are. That's the rule, and I'm not breaking it for anybody, including him. Especially him. Rachel looked at the gray wall in the west. She put her hand flat on the front of Danny's softshell, over the note, the way you'd steady a heartbeat. 12:30, she said. Fast. We roped closer and turned into the wind. We found a scrap of flat rock in the lee of a boulder and stopped there for 4 minutes, no more, because you have to eat before the summit push or your legs quit halfway up. We passed the food back and forth without talking. My hands were cold enough that I fumbled the wrapper, and she caught it out of the air before the wind could take it. And we both watched it not blow away, and that was somehow the funniest thing that had happened in 14 months, and we laughed. Up there, with a storm coming, two people who had no business laughing about anything. Then the light started to flatten, the way it does when the front's edge slides across the sun. I got up. I coiled the slack. I checked her knot and she checked mine, and we stood on that ridge in the failing gold, with the note still sealed over her heart and the summit finally, actually ahead of us. One push. An hour. Everything Danny never crossed off waiting up there in the wind. At first light we said we'd rope up, she said. It's not first light anymore. No, I said. It's better. It's now. I took the first step toward the top. The rope came tight between us, and we went up into the last clear hour to finish the climb he never did. The last hour was the quietest of my life. Quiet on the inside, I mean. The wind was still shoving at us, and the front was still coming, and my legs were still turning to something less than legs. Loud everywhere except the one place that mattered. All the loud stuff had burned off somewhere below the crux, back where I finally said the true thing out loud, and what was left was just the two of us and the rope and the ridge going up. We went slow because the ridge made us go slow. Rock under a skin of old snow, drop-offs on both sides you didn't look at if you wanted to keep moving. I placed my feet like they were the only feet left in the world. Behind me Rachel matched every step. When I stopped, she stopped. When I moved, the rope came tight and then went soft, and I knew she was there without turning around. We didn't talk. There was nothing left to fight about and too much to say for words, so we let the mountain hold the space. 12:19 on my watch when the ridge kicked up one last time and then just quit having any more up in it. The summit of Coldwater is a joke of a place. A pile of rock the size of a kitchen table with a bent metal register box wired to the tallest stone. That's it. 14,000 feet of effort and heartbreak, and the reward is a spot barely big enough for two people to stand without stepping on each other. We stood on it. I looked west. The gray wall of the front was maybe 40 minutes out, close enough now that I could see the snow inside it, a soft moving curtain swallowing the peaks one at a time. We had a sliver. We had exactly enough and no more. Rachel had her back to the storm. She was looking at me, and her face was doing something I'd only seen it do once, back on the ledge when her foot went. All the careful gone out of it. We're here, she said. We're actually here. We're here. And we've got about 30 minutes, so whatever we came to do, we do it now. She nodded. She took her pack off and set it between her boots so the wind couldn't take it, and she knelt down out of the worst of the wind behind the register stone, and I knelt with her. She took out the log page first. The log page had come loose from the note somewhere in the last day, the way old folded paper does, and she'd kept them together in the same envelope over her heart. She unfolded the log page on her knee, both gloves flat on it so the wind couldn't have it, and there it was. Danny's list. 11 years of mountains in his blocky little handwriting, each one crossed off with a single hard line the day he stood on top. Every line struck through. Every line but the last. Coldwater. No line. Rachel took the pencil out of her chest pocket. She'd carried a pencil the whole way. I hadn't known that. A stub of yellow pencil, sharpened with a knife, the kind Danny always had jammed behind his ear at the shop. She held it out to me. "You do it," she said. He'd want the guy who taught him the mountain to be the one. "He taught me," I said. "You've got that backwards. He was better than me by the end, and we both knew it. Then do it because you're here and he can't." Her voice cracked on the last word, and she let it. "Ben, please. Cross it off. Dot." So I took the pencil. My hand was shaking from cold and from the rest of it. I put the point on the paper next to the last line, next to the word Coldwater in his hand, and I drew the line. One hard stroke, the way he did it. Straight through. The list was finished. Every mountain he ever wanted. Done. The last one done by his best friend and his wife on a summit with a storm coming, 40 minutes of weather to spare. Rachel made a sound I'm not going to try to describe. She put her forehead down on her own knee for a second, and I put my glove on her back and left it there, and looked out at the storm coming and gave her the time. Then she straightened up and wiped her face with the back of her glove, which does nothing but you do it anyway. And she reached into the pack and took out the last thing. The ashes. He'd been in a steel canister in the top of her pack the whole climb. A thing about the size of a coffee thermos, heavier than it had any right to be. She held it in both hands. "I don't know how to do this part," she said. I looked it up. There's supposed to be a right way to do it, and I couldn't find it. There's just us up here and the wind. "There's just this," I said. She stood up into the wind. I stood with her. She got the lid off, and she held the canister out over the west edge where the wind was pouring up the face, and she looked at it for 1 second, and then she opened her hands and let him go. The wind took him instantly. It happened faster and harder than the gentle thing you picture. The mountain just took him, a pale ribbon that was there and then gone, out over the drop and into the storm coming to meet it, and Danny went up into the last clear air over the summit he never reached and became part of the weather over his own list. Rachel watched the place where he'd been for a long time. Longer than we had, honestly, but I wasn't going to be the one to say it. Then she reached inside the blue softshell, his softshell, the one she'd worn every step, and she took out the note. "Now," she said. "You and me." Out loud. That was always the deal. Up here or nowhere. Her hands were too cold and too unsteady to work the flap. She tried twice and couldn't, and she handed it to me, and I got a fingernail under the old glue and opened it the rest of the way. One folded sheet. His handwriting, filling most of it, the pencil pressed hard the way he pressed hard on everything. "Read it," she said. "I've carried it 14 months and I've never read past the first line." I couldn't. Read it to both of us. So I read my best friend's last letter out loud on top of the mountain, with the storm 40 minutes out and his ashes already gone into it. "Rush," I read. That was all he ever called her. "If you're reading this, it means Coldwater got the better of me, and I'm sorry, because I know I promised you it wouldn't. I always promise that. I always mean it. The wind tried to take the paper, and I turned my back to it and kept reading. I need you to hear the next part in my actual voice, so read it slow. "You are 31 years old. Do not build a shrine out of me and go live in it. I have watched people do that with their dead, and it is the saddest thing I know, sadder than the dying. You are the best thing that ever walked into my life, and I refuse to be the reason you stop living yours. I want you loud. I want you laughing at something dumb. I want you to burn dinner and tell a bad story too long and fall for some idiot who deserves you, and I want you to do it without one single ounce of guilt, because loving somebody else leaves me exactly as loved as I ever was. There's room. Grief and a full life live in the same house. Anybody who tells you different has never done either." I had to stop. I stood there, with the paper turned away from the wind, and I could not get the next line out for a while. Rachel had both her hands over her mouth. Neither of us moved. And Rosh I read when I could. One more thing, and I've thought about this. If it's Ben. If somewhere down the road it turns out to be Ben. That would be the two people I love most having each other instead of being alone. That would be exactly what I'd choose. So don't either of you make it weird, and don't carry any guilt about it, because I gave it to you myself right here, on purpose. Cross my last line off, scatter me somewhere with a view, and then go home and be alive. That's the whole climb. That was always the whole climb. Love, D. The wind filled the quiet after his name. I folded the paper along its old creases, careful, and I put it back in the envelope and I held it out to Rachel. She didn't take it right away. She was looking at me the way you look at a door you didn't know was in the wall. He knew, she said. 14 months I've been so scared this was a thing I was stealing. From him. And he wrote it down before he even went up. He knew before I knew. He knew everything, I said. It drove you crazy for 11 years. You told me that yesterday. She laughed, wet and broken and real, and she took the note back and pressed it flat against Danny's softshell over her heart one more time, the last time. Then she looked out at the storm, close now, the first hard flakes starting to sting sideways across the rock. Okay, she said. He gave the orders. Cross it off, done. Scatter me with a view, done. Go home and be alive, she turned to me. That last part's yours and mine to figure out, and it can take all the time it wants. But I'm done being scared of it. That's what I came up here to lose, and I lost it. I'm leaving it here. Then we go home, I said. That was the order. And we go now, because that front is going to be on this summit in 20 minutes, and Danny did not write all that, just so we could die being sentimental about it. She almost smiled. He'd hate that. Dying on the descent because we stood around feeling things. He'd never let us live it down. He's dead, Ben. He'd find a way. We got the packs on. We roped up tight. And we turned our backs on the top of Coldwater, on the finish list, and the empty canister, and the place in the air where he'd gone, and we started down into the first edge of the storm. The descent is where mountains kill you. Everybody knows the summit is the halfway point, and everybody forgets it anyway, high on getting there. I did not forget it. I climbed down that ridge like the whole thing was made of glass, one placement at a time, and Rachel came behind me steady and careful and alive, so alive, in a way she hadn't been at the base that morning. The front caught us at the top of the crux. Snow going sideways, the fixed line half buried, visibility down to the length of the rope. We did the crux by feel, by the cold steel in the glove, by the two of us talking each other down one hold at a time. It was the most dangerous thing I have ever done, and I have done a lot of dangerous things, and I would not trade it. Halfway down the couloir, in the whiteout, Rachel slipped again. Only a little. She caught herself on her own axe this time. A clean self-arrest textbook, exactly the way Danny drilled into her on some bunny slope years ago. She popped back up onto her crampons, and I heard her laugh into the storm. Did you see that? She called down through the snow. Did you see the arrest? He'd have been so proud. He saw it, I called back. And I found, saying it, that I believed it a little, and that believing it a little didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It felt like company. That was the small honest thing, the one that actually turned me. It happened down in the whiteout, hours before we ever reached the top, a widow laughing about a good ice axe arrest and a guy shouting back that her dead husband saw it, both of us meaning it. Both of us still standing under the weight of meaning it. Danny and the weather all around us and nobody afraid of him being there. We made high camp as the light went. We got the tent zipped and the stove roaring, and we sat inside the little glowing dome while the storm hammered the fabric, and we ate everything we had, and we did not talk about the note or the top or what happened next, because Danny was right, it could take all the time it wanted. We just sat in the warm and the noise, close two shoulders touching because the tent was small, and let the whole enormous day settle. I should tell you about Maya, Danny's kid sister. The ranger who knew us both, who checked our permit at the trailhead and looked at me a beat too long. The one who'd texted Rachel twice on the approach asking, "Are you sure about this?" She was there when we walked out 2 days later, mud to the knees, wrecked and lighter than we went in. She took one look at the two of us, and she knew. Sisters know. She skipped asking what happened up top. She asked if we crossed it off. We crossed it off, Rachel said. Maya nodded and she cried a little, standing there in her Ranger green, and then she hugged her brother's wife for a long time in the parking lot. And over Rachel's shoulder she looked at me, and the hard face she'd worn at the trailhead was gone. She had Danny's face, honestly. Same eyes. She mouthed one word at me. It was thank you. That's how you honor the dead. I understand it now, standing in a muddy lot with the guy's sister mouthing thank you across his widow's shoulder. You show up for the ones still breathing, and you carry the load that's still in the room. Maya had been carrying Rachel alone for 14 months, terrified her brother's wife was disappearing into the grief, and what she was thanking me for was help. What came after was quiet. By the following spring, Rachel had her own place across town, a little house with too much yard and light in the mornings. She'd started teaching again. She laughed easy now, the loud way Danny asked for in the note. I still ran the gear shop. I still guided in the season. Some evenings she'd come by after close and we'd sit on the back step and I'd fix her broken pack straps for free, and she'd tell a bad story too long, exactly the way he wanted, and neither of us made it weird, exactly the way he asked. It came on slow. Months of it. A careful, real thing, built one backstep evening at a time by two people who both loved the same man and both got permission from him to be alive after. It came slow, one backstep evening at a time. A hand that stayed a second longer, then a dinner, then a spring where I stopped counting. And there's a pack that lives in my shop now. A tall internal frame pack, way too big for Rachel's frame, the one she wore up my porch steps that first grief-heavy night when she asked me to finish his climb. She gave it to me when she got a lighter one. It hangs on the wall behind the register where I can see it. Sometimes a customer asks about it. I tell them it belonged to a friend. That's true enough for a Tuesday. But I know what it is. It's the pack a widow carried to a stranger's door, too heavy for her, carrying a man's ashes and a man's list and a man's last letter, and folded up in the corner where nobody could see it yet, permission for all of us to live. I finished the climb he never did. And somewhere up there, he handed me the thing he had really left undone. He left me Rachel. He needed us to go home and be alive. And we did. So let me ask you something, the way I've been asking myself all winter. If someone you loved handed you the exact thing you were most afraid to do, and told you it was allowed, told you it was the whole point, would you have believed them? Have you ever loved somebody so much you were scared that loving anyone after them would be a betrayal? Tell me your story in the comments. I read everyone. And if you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next story.